Hey, a little bit of Maxwell, but I learned how to use a slider so I could actually turn it down to turn it off. Oh, look at me. I didn't know I even had that feature. Anyway, I'm redoing a show. You may have heard it. Of course, I have no subscribers, so you probably didn't, whoever you are. Maybe in the future some people will hear that. So today is March 29th, 2017. Like I said, maybe in the future people will hear this, so I have to put the year on it. It's probably going to be on my Patreon only at some point. Anyway, that's going to be one of the rewards for giving me a couple bucks a month. And please feel free to go and support me at Patreon. It's patreon.com, blkirk1. I'm going to redo it soon. Since I'm literally talking to no one right now, I have some time. Anyway, so Walking Dead, which was today's Wednesday, it was Sunday, the 28, 27, so it's Sunday the 26th, I guess. Well, around that time, it's an episode called Something They Need. It's the last episode before the finale, and it's a bit more of setup. The first scene is Sasha. She somehow got captured, which really, really pisses me off. And I'll tell you why. They didn't show her going in and capping people, right? They should have had some sort of flashback. They better have a flashback in the future of her going in. Remember, she's a super shot. I believe she had a rifle with her, but even if she popped out a handgun, she could have taken out a lot of people, right? Just headshot, right? They wouldn't even turned because she's supposedly that type of shot. And because she's been set up as being this great shot, we would have believed it. It would have been believable for her to go in and pap, 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 and every single shot is a kill. And she takes out a bunch of people. And that makes what comes next a little bit more sensical. So this guy comes in, this guy David, typical hick name, of course, and he has a typical hick, really hickish accent, which seems to only happen when the guys they either want to make him look really evil or they want to make him look rapey. Otherwise, they don't have these accents, right? So they come in with the hick accent, like I said, to make him look more rapey. And this guy David, again, a very rapey hick name, I say sarcastically, he comes in and is like, "You want some water? I can give you some water. You give me something. You're so purty." Really exaggerated kind of deliverance kind of accent that I noticed was just kind of typecast at this point in The Walking Dead. If somebody has that kind of accent and they're not in the main crew like Daryl, they're the big bad guy, right? But if you've noticed, most of the saviors don't sound anything like that. They sound more, just like a normal person. They don't have this from the sticks kind of accent that you get when you're, live in a town of 12 and you're married to your cousin, right? So it's a typecast I've noticed they brought up. But beyond that, what happens is this guy stupidly leaves the door open during a rape, which is real fucking intelligent. Let me make sure that I'm easily interruptible during this rape. So he leaves the door open, and who walks in while he's kind of, "You look so purty," and he's kind of touching Sasha. Negan walks in. Now, I'm assuming that Sasha took out a bunch of people, right? Because Negan's all impressed. And he's basically saying, "I want you to join me." But before he gets to any of that, he turns to David and goes, "We don't rape people here." Again, with no accent whatsoever, like 99% of the saviors, unless you want him to look rapey. And he does his usual Negan talk where, he's all friendly right before he shanks you. And, of course, he shanks David in the neck, not severing his spine so that he'll turn. Big old nice knife. Reminds you of one of the knives I have, except mine's black. But pretty cool knife. I dug it. I enjoyed it. And then he gives the knife to Sasha, right? And he says, if you want to die, because somehow he's privy to her entire psychological history, if you want to die, then, just stay in here, let him turn, don't use the knife. But if you want to live and join me, use the knife. Okay, I kind of get that, in that either way she's going to get used if she lives. But it seems like he has more information than he should. Maybe that's just me. Anyway, so she uses a knife and kills the walker that he turns into, this guy David, the most hick-sounding David in the history of Davids. And he comes in like, oh, look, you chose to, stay alive, so you're either going to, join me or not, but you're not going to, kill yourself or whatever. You're not going to let yourself die. You're not going to sacrifice yourself, I guess. I didn't understand this point too much because every time I see Sasha, I fall asleep. Now, she got put in, I think, another room, maybe? Or maybe just left in that room, but he took away the knife. And Eugene went up to the door, and he's like, you made a good choice. Like, she made a choice. I don't see how she made a choice. She just made a choice not to die at that given moment. But evidently that's been extrapolated to, like, she's joining the Negan crew, which I don't get. It doesn't make much sense to me. But again, like I said, my brain turns off when I see Sasha because she's so fucking boring. Now, as a character, the actress, she's playing it like she should be playing it. It's just a really shitty character that she's stuck with. Now, the only reason that Sasha's even in there and is alive is because she's basically the turner of the Eugene. And she did her first attempt to do that, where she said, Eugene, get me a weapon so I could kill myself. I thought you didn't want to kill yourself. Okay, now I'm more confused. So she's going to off herself. Eugene believes this. Again, kind of confusing. And gives her one of the pills that he made of cyanide that he didn't give to the wives of Negan because you figured out one of those pills was going to kill Negan. So he gives her this pill and she kind of gets pissed off in silence because she doesn't want him to know. And she really wanted a gun or a knife so she can get out of there and start killing more people, and preferably Negan. And that didn't happen. Eugene misread the tea leaves. And she did make a point that he's either going to use me, he's going to force me to join somehow, or he's going to use me against my friends somehow. She has friends? You see, that's the part I don't get. She's not connected to anybody. The only person was her brother, and that wasn't really... She just was a very flat character in the kind of background character bank that got pulled to the foreground. And it's not convincing. It's not worth watching for the most part. And it's a bit torturous. So Eugene, being, half an idiot, he gives her this pill, and of course she gets really pissed off that she can't use it to kill Negan. Maybe that pill will pop up again when she poisons Negan. I don't know. Supposedly Negan is supposed to, from the comic watchers who have kind of injected some of their spoilers in, supposedly she's going to not kill Negan because Negan is put in a jail cell in Alexandria and becomes like a consigliere to Rick, because there's a bigger, badder enemy out there that the Saviors were actually protecting everyone from. That's why they're called the Saviors, and at least in their own mind. And that's why you're going to have to keep Negan alive to know the kind of, at least for a while, to know the background of the bigger, badder enemies. Okay, so we got that going on. Now we have Oceanside. Tara goes in and holds Grandma, the leader of Oceanside, at gunpoint and says, listen, we need your guns to take on the Saviors. You should want us to do this because they killed all the men and boys. But Grandma's like, but how are we going to protect ourselves, right? while Tara's doing this, they stage some sort of explosion, to distract. They have kind of Michonne as a sniper, kind of up in a tree. They end up getting all of the Oceanside girls into a group on their knees, and says, listen, we don't want to hurt you. We just need the guns to take out the saviors. And some of the Oceanside girls are like, yeah, let's go do that. And they kind of join up, especially the one that Tara, the granddaughter of Grandma, Tara was kind of hooked up with. And is the one that saved Tara's life in the Oceanside episode. So now we have part 2 of the setup of the Alexandrian army and all their allies getting guns. So we got that. Okay, so now that's what they needed. Something they need was the name of the episode, and they needed a bunch of guns and ammo. So they basically took the entire stockpile, which I don't get. They could have left them with the handguns, you got a what's called a CQB, a close quarters combat area. It's all, what's it called? It's all forested, so by the time somebody gets in there and you know that they're coming after you, you're in a handgun range. So you could have left them a bunch of handguns, and it's not really going to affect you too much when you fight a bunch of guys kind of coming up against your big-ass wall. You're going to need rifles, and assault rifles preferably. By the way, a little bit about ARs and semi-auto guns in general, semi-auto rifles in general. A semi-auto rifle, which is what they sell to the public, is not an assault rifle. AR stands for Armalite rifle, not assault rifle. Assault rifle could go into burst and full auto. Okay, that's what the military uses them for. Nothing sold in the United States can go into full auto. Those are not sold to civilians. So the whole kind of argument about assault rifles, we don't actually sell them to individuals without some sort of super special license anywhere in the United States. Just wanted to kind of add that in because people still think AR stands for assault rifle. It does not. It stands for Armalite rifle. They're the people who actually make the civilian and military versions of the M16, the M16A1, etc., etc. So, that aside, now we got a bunch of Alexandrians with several stockpiles of guns put together now, and they're able to defend the wall against Negan and his little crew. Now, I doubt Negan has a full battalion, which would be about 600 men. But the Alexandrians, with all their allies, they have 600 shooters. I shouldn't say men because there are a lot of women in the Saviors too. They're just fewer and far between her because it's harder to make them seem rapey with a deep hick accent. So, men serve that purpose a little better. Really deep hick accent equals evil. So just the junkyard people alone are probably a battalion. Then the other allies combined would about equal that as well. So they're actually way outnumbered. There's nothing to indicate that Negan has that many people. Not 600, not 500. We don't really know, but there's been no indication that he has this huge amount of people, because he also, remember, a lot of the people he captures, he puts to work in the foundry, doing God knows what, in the compound in general. So a lot of people actually aren't part of the army. They're part of his, slaves or whatever. So his slave working class. Anyway. So we have a pretty sure fight. I mean, without Negan having a bunch of explosives or howitzers or, anything like that, which pretty much the only people who have that now are the Alexandrians. And they've used some of it, though, at Oceanside to create an explosion for a distraction. So we don't really know explosive-wise what the Alexandrians have, but we have a hint that the Saviors don't have that much. They had a bunch of rigged-up RPGs and some dynamite that looked like it was sweating. For your edification, when dynamite sweats, it's literally sweating like nitroglycerin, and that's a contact explosive. So it's very dangerous to handle any dynamite that doesn't look dry. Okay? And that's why Rosita was like, I don't like the look of that one because it was sweating. So when they took the explosives off that line a couple episodes ago, that was because she knew somehow, I guess she was military too. We only really had the indication that Abraham was military, and no one really remembers if Rosita was or not. I guess she was, because she knew that about dynamite. I don't recall. Again, she's kind of a flat background character. I'd call her like they're flat circles. Her and Sasha and a bunch of the other people are just kind of like a background character bank. And they kind of have to be, like, over time, kind of pulled into the mainstream. And that's usually some relationship with Rick or Michonne or, like, one of the big players. But when they're not even really connected to those people, they're not really part of the crew. They become very flat. It just becomes a matter of that kind of circle, flat character, as opposed to, like, a 3D globe. How much that circle is filled in. With Rosita, it's a little bit more filled in. With Sasha, it's just a point in the middle. It's not really anything. And that's just my opinion as far as that. But there are a lot of characters that kind of come on board that aren't part of the original crew that are really snoozers. They're really just like kind of background characters. And like I said, Sasha, her only reason for being alive is whatever she's going to do inside the compound. There's going to be some sort of escape, and she's going to, whatever's going to happen with that, which no one has any interest in, really. And I hope she doesn't end up killing Negan. One, they're not really supposed to kill him because of the outside groups that the Saviors are protecting against, and they need to know about that. So that would be kind of a stupid move. But also, her killing Negan would be so disappointing. It's got to be Rick. It's got to be one of the main characters, right? So, anyway, she's going to do something or try to do something, as evidenced by those scenes with Eugene. And as far as Eugene, Sasha is going to somehow kind of turn him or get him to do something to help out the Alexandrian army. It's pretty much all that could happen. And then we have Oceanside, where they got their weapons, and they did a pretty good job of not hurting anybody. I would have liked if they killed one or two people to make their point. Maybe Grandma. But Tara did kind of, not Tara, granddaughter, whatever her name is, did hit her in the head or something to shut her up. So yeah, there's kind of a little bit of a rebellion in Oceanside, and some of them are going to join up and actually take on the Saviors with them. All good. Now, the last scene was with, I call him Burnface. I forget his name. He's another one who's kind of been drawn out of the background character pool, but at least with him searching for his wife and then blaming the doctor, he has a bit more of a character development in this. And you kind of see, how he doesn't want to be a savior. And he's stuck there, and he's thinking about his wife and where she might be. Okay. So Burnface comes in, and he wants to help defeat the Saviors. And that's the last scene. And then, of course, there's the coming attraction where you see Rick on the wall with a bunch of, with Carl, and a bunch of other people from the main crew, and they're all rifled out, so they're in battle pack. So we know that that's going to be kind of where the battle happens, at Alexandria. They're going to protect their walls, and that's not a bad thing to do. You want to have a defensive position, especially if you set it up to be harder and harder to get through. And then, of course, when you have Negan taking on the Alexandrians, and then their allies come in from behind or the flanks, and now you have basically Negan might pull out like a huge number of his army, and then that's going to get decimated because they just have a lot more people. They always talk about the Saviors being like a large group, but they never really show them as being that big. If you look at the scene where they killed Abraham and Glenn, where Negan killed Abraham and Glenn, there was a lot of people there, but how many was that? 100 people? 150 maybe, at the most? Like I said, not exactly a battalion. A lot of people compared to, like, Rick and his core of like 5 people, but not a tremendous amount of people when it comes to all the people in the kingdom that are fight ready, all the people in Hilltop that are being trained, all the people in the junkyard, which are probably bigger than the kingdom already. The Saviors already. So they really are going to have an advantage with numbers, which gets rid of that as far as, Negan has this much bigger army. Where is that going to come from? Maybe he's got a bunch of outposts, like that other outpost where Carol went buck wild and did a great job of shanking many a people. But it hasn't really been foreshadowed. So it's kind of going to be like, whoa, he has 2,000 guys? Where the fuck did that come from? And how come all the really mean ones have really thick accents, but the other ones don't? So we'll see what happens with that. They may pull the whole, Negan has this much bigger army than has ever been foreshadowed. And I really wish they don't. But at the same time, what kind of suspension of disbelief is, Negan's like possibly 3-1, outdone army? Like what, he's going to win how? I mean, they all have is assault rifles. Well, the civilian versions of them mostly. So where's this big advantage for Negan at this point? The way Rick set it up, he's already kind of won. So a defensive tactic with superior numbers inside and outside the walls, it's kind of a foregone conclusion. There really is not much Negan can do. And like I said, I hope they keep him alive because they picked a really good actor for Negan. So I hope they keep him alive because he can act. And he's somebody who's interesting, at least, as a bad guy. Governor, not so much. He was just like a bad guy pretending to be a good guy. Negan is more of just like a kind of like, pure evil. But at the same time, he calls his group the Saviors. Interesting. At least that's a little interesting depth. We have to be really strict and keep control because we're fighting these much bigger, much badder people, which we'll find out about next season, most definitely. So, I've laid out what happened in that episode and my opinions on it. And agree or disagree, I look forward to your interactions.